everyone. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole. We have 3 items on the agenda this evening, and the first one is discussion with Brandon Atwood, President of the Norwood Board of Education. Welcome, Mr. Atwood, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. I definitely would like to extend a thanks to this council and a thanks to you, Mr. Miracle, for inviting me to participate in this for the first time. So I only have a couple of items that I just want to touch on. So the purpose of today was just to kind of start the process of the city and the schools just working in a little bit more collaborative fashion. And this isn't something that hasn't been done before or hasn't been going on, but I think this gives us an opportunity to just kind of highlight and touch on some things where we have been working together in the past on. And so the first thing that I would like to bring up is just with the Allison playground equipment. So months ago, the Board of Education passed a resolution basically just giving the Allison playground equipment to the city for whatever you guys want to do with it. And as far as the school district is concerned, that equipment that's sitting there is yours until you take it or you tell us you don't want it. So I know it's been there for a number of months, and I know there's been a couple of opportunities to try and find a use for that. But I just want to let the city know that, you know, it is yours. You guys can have it. It isn't going to go anywhere until you say you don't want it. But, you know, we passed that resolution, and it is your guys' equipment as far as we're concerned.
Thank you.
Is there any questions regarding the equipment?
Well, I was just give a little update if I could, just so people watching at home kind of know what's going on, and some of the other members of council. So we've had several sites in mind for this equipment, and lastly, it was, you know, we were thinking about using it at Hunter. With having to switch phases, so switching the walking path to the second phase, and moving the equipment to the first phase so we can use the grant for ADA equipment for that kind of washed that idea out. And that happened because with that playground equipment at Allison, there's a lot of loopholes that we got to kind of jump through and narrowly thread the needle on to make sure we can even use it. And things we're still looking into, which is finding matching hardware, because we're going to have to replace that. There's a slide broken, there's some stairs broken. We got to replace those pieces of equipment. We got to see if we can get that done. And then, per Clint Zimmerman, when we pull that equipment out of the ground, the pillars knocking that concrete off of them, we can't, if we damage those, then, I mean, then we'll be done. So there's multiple hoops to jump through on that to see if we can get it. And under my perspective on it, so we can insure it, which I'm sure Moore would be able to speak more on after that. But there are a lot of hoops to jump through. Use this, so it's not going to be a very fast process, but we will use it in Norwood when and if we find out that we can get all these pieces of hardware, the slide, the other pieces to make it a whole complete set, and have that space to use it at. So, Mr. Albert, I do appreciate the Board of Education voting and giving that to us. We will make use of it if at all possible. And if we cannot, we will let you know certainly sooner rather than later on that. So, but if Mr. Moore wants to talk on the legality and the insurance purposes.
Well, the insurance is not a problem. Put in new playground equipment be covered under the insurance policy. The question we had, and this goes back, I thought it was a lot longer ago, but we just wanted to make sure that whatever documentation there was on here's how you install it, we just wanted to make sure that we did it right. Mm-hmm. You know, less about insurance coverage and getting sued than about anybody getting hurt on it. So that was, and I don't know what's been uncovered, but I know that Clint was working with whoever at the school district would know. That was our big concern, that we get it done right, whether we do it in-house, we bring somebody in that does this kind of stuff professionally to do the installation the right way.
Yeah. So as far as we're concerned, there is no timetable that this has to happen under. Yeah. But I just, you know, want to assure the city that, I mean, you guys can take all the time that you want as long as, you know, nothing's happened with that property. Yeah. So,
great. Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to the second item that I wanted to touch on with this council. And so I am pleased to announce that Interact for Health has awarded Centerpoint Health a planning grant to work with the Norwood City School District to work on developing a student-based health center for the Norwood City School District, opening in January of 2021 at the high school. So the health center will have a nurse practitioner and a dentist to serve our families when fully staffed. So it'll be there for the students, it'll be there for the staff members, and it'll be there for the community. Construction has already begun to upgrade the current nurses suite at the high school into the health center, and it will have its own dedicated entrance that'll be closed off from the rest of the building. So right off there, off of Sherman Avenue. So Interact for Health is a foundation dedicated to improving community health in 20 counties in Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. And the district and the city is fortunate that their headquarters are located here in Norwood, at Norwood Tower, over in Rookwood. And we know that healthy students do better academically, and having immediate access to healthcare professionals when illness strikes can improve outcomes. And so I believe this is especially important as we endure our current crisis. And we are committed to the collaboration between our district and Centerpoint Health to create business partnership that will make both entities more successful in improving the lives of the children and families of Norwood. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I get that the intent is very much students, the children first, then I suppose the teachers or any faculty that support those children. Then you said community. Does that mean that there is a window or some times or a certain level of care that people that aren't affiliated with the school but still residents of Norwood have access to them? Or
That is correct. So that
great.
suite, depending on the hours that Centerpoint Health operate that facility, I mean, they'll have whatever access they need to the building. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
Wow.
does the, I guess, salary of the two people in there, is that coming out of the school budget? Is that paid for by Centerpoint somehow?
So that's a great question that you asked. So just, I want to point out that the construction work and the planning grant, so none of this has come out of the general budget of the school district. So all of the construction work going into making the space viable has all been obtained through outside grants. So the district is spending no general purpose dollars on this. And in fact, the salaries of the people are going to be coming through grant awards as well, and will be done in conjunction with Centerpoint Health and Interact for Health.
That's great.
Wow.
Great question, Mr. Gratian. Anyone else have any question regarding that?
Outstanding.
It is outstanding.
Yeah.
So the third thing that I have on our list, and working in collaboration with the city, I just want to thank the city for letting the Norwood Health Department work hand in hand with the school district through the entire crisis that we're currently going through. The health department and the city have been great partners through this. Just recently, I don't know if you guys are aware, but we have just put together a new team. It's a data assessment risk team, so DART for short. There are 2 Board of Education members on this team, members of the school district administration, and then we're also joined by having Mr. Williamson with the health department and Gina Croft with the health department as part of this team. And then we're looking at specific data all the way from the state level, all the way down through the county, the city, to the local school district to make sure that any decisions that affect the city and the school district are made using good data, and that we understand what that data is. So we're letting science kind of dictate what we do and how we move and how we react to things. So, and that doesn't work without collaboration between the school district and the city.
Mr. Tracy?
And what type of data is this looking at? I mean, is it specific for one piece of data, or is it specific to, or I mean, is it a broad range of everything?
No, it is kind of a broad range of a lot of different things. So what we've done is we met before the team got together to kind of understand is what kind of data should we be looking at? And this was done in conjunction with the health department, kind of helping guide what we should be looking at. And then we also kind of look at what other school districts that are doing a similar type of activity. We're kind of blessed in Norwood to have a local health department. A lot of other school districts don't have that, and they have to rely on partnership with the county health department. But since we have a local health department, we're able to do that. Just for your understanding, the kind of data that we're looking at from the state level, we're looking at the number of COVID tests performed per day. And then we're also looking at the percentage of positive cases from those tests, which then gives the number that you see reported in the news. And then we're also drilling down to the county data. We're looking at the number of new cases per day per 100,000 people. And the other important figure that we're looking at the county level is what's called the R value, or the reproducibility rate. So that means that, you know, if the R value is 1 and you contract the disease, more than likely you're going to give it to one other person. So if the R value is 2 and you contract it, you're going to give it to 2 other people. So we're looking at the R value, and then drilling down more locally to Norwood. The health department is supplying us with the report that they give out, which has the number of active investigations. And then they do a great job in breaking that down by age group bands, so that we can understand how many of those are school-age children, how many of those are young adults, how many of those are seniors. And then we also look at, you know, data with the school district. So how many kids are quarantined, how many kids are positive, how many staff, all of that data gets factored into what we look at. Yes, sir.
Yes, a follow-up on that. So I guess my question was answered as it is one specific item, not a broad range of items, or illnesses, I should say. You're just looking at just corona, not the flu or any other type of illness that a child could pick up. You're just looking at coronavirus.
So that's a great question that you asked. This team so far has met one time last Friday. In that discussion from that team meeting, it was brought up whether or not we should be looking at flu data. The health department did state in that meeting that flu data is voluntarily reported. So it's not reported the same way that COVID data is reported. So when we meet again this Friday, we're going to see what kind of flu data the health department is able to provide us. So, but we will look at that as well.
Anyone else? Any other questions?
Well, if I could, I would just like to say thank you for coming, Mr. Atwood. I think it's very important for the school and the city to work together and have a good partnership, and hopefully we can see more from you and the Board of Education in the future.
So thank you so much. And you know, I just want to take this opportunity just to thank the Norwood community for last night. So.
Mr. Tracy?
Do you know how many cases are within the district?
So positive cases for children, staff, doesn't matter?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
So as of last Friday, we had 2 positive cases for children and 1 positive staff member.
Okay.
As of last Friday, when the team got together and met. So one of the things that we try to do is we try to determine with that team whether or not we're seeing in-school spread or whether it's community spread that's coming into the district. So
I was just wondering because I know my daughter's school has had 0.
it's a very small number so far. So we've been fortunate with the protocols that we put in place.
My daughter's been in school 5 days a week since it started, so, and they've still got 0. Guess I'm just being picky. I don't know. Giving you a hard time.
They only have 3 cases with that many students.
How many students do we have now, Mr.?
So we're right at 1,800
1,800.
in the district.
That's students.
That's
And then-
students.
And then employees of the school system.
So employees, you're going to add about another 300?
So is that, so as of last Friday, is that current positive cases, or is that total? Because I think we've gotten more notifications of
No, that's current.
current, okay,
So,
yeah, so
right.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Atwood? Moving forward, I would like to have you come to the committee of the whole on a regular basis. So I'd like to extend that invitation to you. I think there are other items that we could collaborate on, and we could communicate with each other as well.
Yeah, I'm totally open for that. So I appreciate the invitation, and I think this is something that we should do on a more regular basis.
And I'm just grateful. Mr.
Can
Garrett.
can we put it on the agenda for the next committee of the whole, next month or so, that part of our discussion with Mr. Atwood and any other board members that would like to attend would be working together as far as TIFs go, and making sure that we work together on that, so it comes out a good deal for both of our entities, as well as the business that we would be working with. But we need to be working together, so it's no more like it's been in the past, where the city would work a deal and then put pressure on the school to say, hey, we worked this deal, if you don't approve your side, then this thing's gonna collapse. And that shouldn't be happening. We should be working together collaboratively to make sure that we are both on the same page, and when we meet with developers in the future, that we kind of almost have our own package ready to say, this is our deal. So if we could put that on for the next committee of the whole to make sure that we start, at least get that conversation started, because we need to get that going.
Will do. And what I'd like to do is, moving forward, is maybe the first Monday of the month, we'll just have the committee of the whole.
Okay.
Anything else for Mr. Atwood? We're grateful and thank you for coming, and we appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thank you, President Miracle. Thank you, council members, Mr. Moore, for letting me be a part of this.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon, appreciate your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to the second item on our agenda this evening, we had put tax levies on there. I think Mr. Bonsall had asked me to do that. Mr. Bonsall?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So the reason for the discussion was because at the last council meeting, we had an ordinance on the agenda to, it was an informational ordinance, but it was to request, I guess, basically, information from the auditor's office, the county auditor's office, on the amount of money that would be generated by renewing our emergency levy. And it's this emergency operating levy. It's been on the books for, I think, a couple of decades now. I'm pretty sure it started, Donna Lake said it was started around the GM era when they left town. And we've been renewing this emergency levy ever since. And, you know, at the time, the concern was, or at least at that meeting, the concern was, you know, are we sure that we actually need the levy? Is there a chance that we could handle things without the levy, or potentially replace it with a street-only levy? And so that way the tax rate would stay the same, but it would basically be directed for those next 5 years or however long that we put it on to actually make sure that we do the streets. So I was able to get the data on how much that levy produces, and it's about $1.5 million a year for the city's general fund. You know, just with the way that property taxes work, at least since the 1970s in Ohio, when a levy is approved, it's approved for a specific dollar amount that reflects the millage at the time when it was initially initiated. So if property tax values go up, then, or property values go up, then for these type of levies, the amount will stay the same. The millage, the effective millage will just kind of slightly decrease over time. So, long story short is, I mean, I'm at this point just learning how much it is. You know, I'm okay with not having a huge discussion on this. It definitely looks like it's needed. Is it needed at that exact amount? I'm not sure, but it seems like it's needed. And then, as well, we can do a renewed focus for making sure that we try to get as much general fund money into the streets as possible, since that's where that money's going. So at least we can try to take some of that, if you will, and push it over to the streets, which is really, you know, from what I hear from residents, I mean, it is the number one concern that our residents have. And it's also the most expensive concern our residents have, but it is number one, and it's something that we should take seriously. So I just kind of want to let you know where my head was on that, you know, the evolution since the last meeting, just knowing that the amount that we would renew it at is the same amount that it was originally approved at. So it makes me feel a little bit better there that the thing doesn't keep incrementing up, because that's the part that I'd be a little bit worrisome of. But anyways, long story short, that's where I'm at. I mean, I don't have any additional discussion that I need to have, but if there are additional things that we want to talk about, the tax levies.
Mr. Noda?
Yeah. First off, it's not a terrible idea to challenge and question these sort of things. It is as you said, it was over $1 million, so that, I think most of us agree we're trying to just get ourselves out of fiscal emergency, and then that is probably the process or mindset we need to be in to process things after we gain back control of our finances, I suppose. The other thing I would say, in addition to just having a renewed sense of commitment for streets, is also that despite, I think, our collective desire to put $1.4 million in the general fund next year, and maybe after that, the after that part will be decided by the ballot. So it's kind of like after 21, so I guess for 22, it's going to be the people's decision whether they think that we should be operating with that $1.5 million or not. And so at least that's how I understand it. So I just wanted to kind of make that point clear that we're kind of doing this in prep for the 21, but that specific information gathering ordinance we put together was really to set it up for a ballot for you guys to all vote on it. So.
Thank you, Mr. DiNardo. Mr. Tracy? Mr. Moore?
Thank you, and I know I don't get a vote, and I don't really have a say, and it's entirely up to you guys, but I just want to mention this. In 2005, the last time I think we were in a good shape before this thing went on the ballot. I was saying, no, let's get rid of it, go to streets, and then we had the Great Recession. And I would say, and we desperately needed it.
You what?
After 2005, it passed. And before the next time it came up, because I was outvoted as far as we're not going to do it or we're going to make it just a streets levy, I was outvoted on council, so it went on as the regular renewal. And what happened then is we had the Great Recession, and we desperately needed the million. I think then it was $1.2 million, whatever it was. We desperately needed that money. And I would say right now, I totally understand the situation. Do we want to look at maybe changing the way we finance the city? We want to move this away from this constantly doing this and guaranteeing it to infrastructure instead of some of the other things that the money can be taken for that doesn't get it as far. And I totally understand that. We've got $20 million for the infrastructure that needs to be done. There's no question about that. I would say right now, though, one of the concerns I have is bulk of the city's revenue comes from earnings tax. And most of that comes from employers in the city of Norwood. And I don't know how long that business model is going to work, that office buildings are going to be the way they are after what we're going through. And I'm just tossing that as something to keep in mind. And I picture it in 2 or 3 years, and I can see those places drying up, those places dying, and cities in Ohio, because Ohio's really unusual, in that they fund themselves primarily, a lot of them, on earnings tax as opposed to property tax, that we may be looking at having to shift to a primarily property tax basis to function. I mean, that's the kind of thing that, you know, thinking about being on finance committee again, that's, you know, that would keep me up at night. But I just want to toss that consideration out right now. It is something to look at. We don't know what revenues are going to look like in 6 months. So I'm just going to toss that out, that it's certainly worth having the conversation, but that's something to maybe keep in the back of your minds, is that earnings tax engine may not be there.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Tracy?
Maybe I shouldn't have let you speak before me. I'm not going to reiterate what Mr. DiNardo and Mr. Moore said, because they pretty much summed up my entire speech. But I will say that it's great that Mr. Bonzo wants to look at streets and throw money into the streets and let's get as much as we can into the streets, but you have to look at how many streets can really be done in a year. I mean, you've got one company doing streets, maybe two if you're lucky, if you got enough money to get 2 of them going, and you might get 4 or 5 a year. So we're not looking to do 15 to 20 streets just because we throw $1.5 million into, or 1.4 mil into the streets levy, or into the streets fund. You know, we set up the streets in an order that we can make sure that we get those streets done, whether it be 5, 6. That's, you know, you can't, it's just not plausible to try and do 10 streets a year. And we've got 66 miles worth of streets.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Mr. Kelch?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree a little bit with Mr. Tracy here. I think we can do as many streets as we can afford to get done in a year. I think that's the problem that's holding us back, not the available companies. We surely are not running low on the amount of streets that need done. I mean, that's for sure. I personally, when we were talking about this on council floor, I was confused. I thought Mr. Bonzo was slowing this up or trying, because being on finance committee, and Mr. DiNardo can speak to this more, I know we have, I know we don't have, and the needs we have outweigh the money we have. That's just apparent by anybody that can balance a checkbook and understand that. And having this operating levy renewed is very important for just our operating day-to-day expense. We have way more needs that we need to get done than money we have coming in. And right now, in our current model, we're able to put some Band-Aid fixes on things, or fix a little here, fix a little there. How long does that last? As Mr. Moore said, how long does that income model last? How long does this repair and maintenance model last as well? And since coming in, since we had our first finance committee meeting, this is something that's been very apparent to me, is we need to look at ways that we can get income into the city. GM's not coming back. All right, the business we have are great, but we need to maybe look at a different model to bring more money in the city. We have almost, I think the last time they estimated was $14 million of streets projects to do. We have Elm Avenue alone. That's going to be a $3 to $5 million project. So I would most certainly love to start conversation talking about some sort of streets and infrastructure levy that could both take care of our roads in Norwood and the sewer problems that we have on Elm, because it's not just Elm. There's Franklin. There's other areas in West Norwood that are hit bad. There's areas in Ward 4 that are hit bad. This is something in Norwood, our infrastructure is old. Our money that we have coming in isn't enough to do it, so we most certainly have to look at, mainly us finance committee members, look at what income we have coming in, how sustainable is that going to be? Is that going to go up or down? And if it does go down, are we going to be in a bad spot? If it does go up, is that going to be enough to get us over that hump to get more work done? And I think the answer to that one is probably going to be no. It's not going to be enough. So since we're talking about the subject of tax levies, I would most certainly love to start the subject of a potential streets infrastructure levy that can be used solely on some of our flooding problems, to widen up some of those storm sewers in a conjunction with MSD, and redoing some of our streets. I think that would certainly be a levy, if we had to put one up, that the residents of Norwood would be in support of.
You mean in addition to this,
Yes,
or no?
in addition to this.
Thank you, Mr. Kelch. Mr. Tracy?
Great idea. You and I have discussed that in the past. All I was trying to say was that 1.5 million or 1.4 million from this operating levy, putting it into the streets, isn't going to do much. It's not gonna get an extra company out there to run 5 or 6 more streets.
No, 'cause-
It's not going to, I mean, we
And
need it more for operating.
Currently, this is going on our general fund, and it's being spent some here, some over here, some
Right,
there.
but we need it more for the operating
Yeah, but we
function.
we're not in a position that we can take this 1.5 million away from, some of it's going to parks, some of it's going here, some of it's going, and put it just to streets, because then we'd be drowning, we'd be in deep water in these other areas.
Correct, that's what I was
That's why
trying
I'm
to go
saying
by.
we need this one, and I think we need more. Nobody wants to talk about levies, nobody wants to raise taxes, but if we want to have nicer things, we're gonna have to spend a little bit of money to
That's-
get some nicer things, is my point.
That's where I was going. I was trying to say that we shouldn't change this into into the streets fund and take it away from operations.
No, that needs to stay
That's,
operations,
that's where I was going with that.
yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Bonzo?
Thank you, Mr. President. So does anybody know about what the cash balance is in our general fund right now? With the city? Because, I mean, I guess we're making all these assumptions that.
You specifically asking me? Because you keep looking at me.
If you want to answer it.
No, but I'll defer that question to Mr. DiNardo.
Because we're making these broad-based claims that we have enough money, or we don't have enough money, or whatever, and I don't think all of us actually understand how much money the city currently does have, how much we've received more in revenues than we've spent this year. I think there's a lot of things that aren't being understood. And I'll just, responding to Mr. Geraci saying that we can't do more streets, we very much can do more streets. We can create whatever bid package that we create, we can put additional streets in there. And it probably would generate attention from additional companies that instead of doing 1 or 2 streets, they might be willing to do 5, 6, 7 streets. So the other thing is, it was suggested that I was trying to slow this up just to slow it up. I mean, I may not have made myself clear at the last meeting, but my goal was to see if there was a chance that we could replace this with a streets and infrastructure levy.
I want to clarify, I thought you were doing that, but I don't think you're doing that now.
Oh, gotcha, okay. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you. After doing additional research, it's not going to work like that. So we won't be able to do that. I would say before we can definitely talk about a levy, but before we decide to put a levy on the ballot, I think we should be clear what we want to use the levy for. And then also make sure that there's not alternate sources of income, or that these whatever projects that we're talking about couldn't be supported, right now after encumbrances by the $3.8 million cash balance that's in the general fund. In addition, there's $1.5 million in the street M&R fund right now. So I just think, again, I just want to make sure that we're bringing data and bringing actual action items to the conversation, and I think we all know that there's things in the city that are falling apart for sure, and I think a lot of these things, there just needs to be, I think the city administration's done a commendable job this year, but I think we've got to just keep doing more projects. I think the money's there to get some of these projects done at the city that need to be done. When we talk about the city buildings and such, I think it just takes time to do those projects, and I think they're working on them and trying to get us caught up.
Mr. Bonzo, well, some of that $3.8 million carryover we have is largely due to projects not getting done in the past, so that money can carry back over. We can't rely on that, we're gonna have that every year. That's because we haven't been doing stuff. Now, this administration, this council, we're getting stuff done, that money's going to go away. And we're not gonna have that nice carryover. I think we're packaging that in the wrong way for residents that are watching this right now. I think we're packaging it in a way, oh, we have this nice carryover, we got a lot of money here. We have a lot of money, we have a carryover because things haven't been getting done in the past, unfortunately. And now that we're gonna start getting things done, things cost money, and when you wait longer, that maintenance costs a little bit more. So that carryover that we have this year, we can't rely on that in the future. We can't just that's like you get a big check one week and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get out and spend it, the next week you don't, and you're like, oh, I wish I didn't do that. Let's not get ourselves in that situation as a city. Let's use that money to fix what we can now, but by looking into this levy process or looking into these projects we have and how much they're gonna cost, we need to set ourselves up for success and package that as in a real life scenario to these residents, say, hey, we do have money here now. We're gonna try to do as much as we can right now, but for the future, and to keep that going, we may need a little more, which we're gonna need a little more.
Thank you, Mr. Kells. Mr. Bonzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I used the term carryover, I didn't think I did. I thought I said cash balance, but I might have said carryover. But cash balance is what I was referring to, and I was not implying that that balance was going to be there every single year. I'm saying that there is the balance now, and that's even with almost $2 million of encumbrances, money that we think we're going to spend, but it hasn't actually come out of the bank account yet. So all I'm saying is that if we're going to be looking at infrastructure levies, or we're going to be looking at streets levies, or what have you, I mean, let's just make sure that we talk about what we're actually going to be using them for, and also making sure that there's not other sources of revenue before we ask the citizens to pay more taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Bonzo. Anyone
Can we just
else?
clarify too, so about 2 million encumbered, and so that leaves about 1.8 left over.
No.
And I believe 1 point some of that is going to be carried over for January of the next year, correct?
If you stick to the plan. but-
Yeah, if we stick to the plan and we spend that 2 million, so that doesn't leave a lot of meat on the bone for the following year.
Okay, so there's $5.7 million cash balance right now, because when I said it earlier, I said taking into account encumbrances. Right now, it's $5.7 million. There's a little bit over $1.8 million in encumbrances, so it leaves the cash balance, the effective cash balance, if you will say, at $3.8 million after the encumbrances.
Thank you, Mr. Bonzo. Mr. Leonardo?
I know that the agenda item was tax levies, plural, so this isn't a conversation that's out of order by any means. It's just that I think that we've done a lot to try to get ourselves into a place where we can get out of fiscal emergency. And I think, unfortunately, COVID stopped a lot of expenses, so that's going to probably make it look like somewhat easier. Additionally, you have the problem, which might be balancing that out in the future of, but revenues might go down. So you have you have a little bit of a pull and a little bit of a push. And I suppose what I'm trying to say is, I think a lot of us are in agreement that setting ourselves up to put the $1.4 million on the ballot, and hopefully the citizens or the residents want us to continue that on an operating level, is probably necessary. That said, I think that let's make sure we put all of our focus into getting out of fiscal emergency before we start getting too far down paths of adding taxes.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
tax
I'm just saying, that's conversations one's gonna need broached.
Okay, fair enough.
And I do agree also with Bonzo saying, we need to figure out exactly what we'd be spending it on too. I mean,
Sure.
we're not saying, hey, let's talk about it and start tonight. I'm just saying, it's probably a conversation that's gonna be coming quick.
Cool. I just want to make sure we're
So
focusing
I
on.
agree, I'm just putting points out there.
Thank you, Mr. Leonardo. Anyone else? Thank you, gentlemen. Good conversation. We'll move on to item 3.
Real quick, Mr. Atwood, you don't have to stick around. If you want to scoot, you can scoot.
Appreciate it.
I told him that
Yeah.
he's riveted, so.
Oh, yeah.
Moving on to item 3. Speaking of fiscal recovery, item 3 is the update on reporting counting methods. I have emailed this to you, gentlemen. Just for everyone that's watching, I've created an Excel spreadsheet, and we have all 34 items that we're currently working on. And if you go all the way over to the right, these are the comments that Anna Mary from the State Auditor's Office has filled in for us. I have color-coded the ones in green are the ones that she has approved. So those are approved, and we can check those off the list. Starting Monday, the 9th, spoke with Mr. Stith, and our new software will be implemented. And you'll see on here in some of Anna Mary's comments that they were waiting on the new software to do some tests and other things like that. So that we'll be able to move forward with those. If you look at item 2, we will have an ordinance for you to approve Tuesday night that I believe if you look over to the right, there was an ordinance that was wrong, needs to be fixed. So we're going to take care of that Tuesday night. And then item 16, I'm working with Anna Mary to have to set a limit for the blanket purchase orders, and then I will present that to you as well. So
And that's the
hoping to-
benchmarking?
Please?
Because you're benchmarking?
Yes.
You can't see me smiling under here. Yeah, that, I wanted to bring that up because the Finance Committee got a little bit, something milder than frustrated, but bummed that we thought we met the mark, and I guess we didn't.
I did speak to her. Those comments were on the first email that I sent you.
Yeah, I just wanted to publicly
Yeah.
talk about, I don't know if you wanted to say anything more than you're
Well-
submitting benchmarking and we're going to come back.
Well, exactly. So, in my conversation with Anna Mary, we're hoping that with the new eGov software provided by SSI, that they will have something that will address those
Thank you.
concerns, Mr. DiNardo. Mr. Tracy,
So is the software basically holding up most of this?
please.
Is the software basically holding up most of this?
No, you'll see on the comments, where she has said, the ones that, she felt that with the new software, that we could move forward. There are also, you'll see in the comments, if you've read it, there's testing that needs to be done. They came in last month and did some testing. I think we cleared out about five or six items, and we're going to continue to do that. And then you will see as well, where she says that testing is going to have to be on an ongoing basis until termination. So essentially, up until the time we're out, she's going to have to come back and.
Just seems like they keep twisting them hands around our necks. It seems like you're doing a great job on this, by the way. But it just seems like the state just is not letting go of that grip. Every time I look at this, and I think we're making a ton of progress, it's like we're 3 steps backwards.
I think we are making progress. One of the reasons why I sent this to Anna Mary, I wanted her to put the comments over here to the right for all of you to see, is that we want to know exactly what the expectation is for us. And then what do we have to do to check this one off? And if there was, whoever, because there's a lot of people working on this. So whoever is the responsibility, in some cases, even after it's taken care of, we're going to have an ordinance that'll be presented to council for them to approve as well.
Yeah, I'm not frustrated with you and anybody doing the work on this at all. I think I'm more frustrated with the state and how they're just, it just seems like they don't want to let us go.
We're gonna work through it. It's
Making their money off of us, they don't care.
a lot of hard work, but we're got a lot of people working hard to get this done.
I'd love to have Anna Mary come down here and speak. Maybe she can come up against, me.
Mr. DiNardo.
I think just to make sure that people, folks on TV hear a little bit more clearly about your response to not just some of the things that were in Finance Committee, but a few others. The way you worded it I don't know if it was a text or an email, was when we were talking specifically about some of the purchase order items. You said that you were just basically going to say, in so many words, if you have an idea of how you want it to look in your head, tell us and we'll go do that. And I think that was a really useful comment, and I think that's a really clever way to tick off a whole bunch of these. rather than us have a bunch of meetings in like a finance committee or whoever, and come up with an idea or a plan and then submit it and they review and don't like it, just tell us the answer you're looking for, if that's how it's gonna be, and then we'll probably do it that way.
Exactly, because she's been through this before with other cities.
You've nailed it. So I think that was an awesome approach and a great response, and I think it's gonna yield a little bit faster pickup. Maybe, we'll find out, what she says, but I think that's gonna, yield a lot more tick boxes on this list, Mr. Tracy, so.
Mr. Moore?
Can you ask for,
Hopefully.
can you give us a purchase order policy, some samples from other cities?
Yes.
Say, okay.
Exactly, and that's what Mr. DiNardo was alluding to. I think my thought process was exactly what Eric was saying, was if you've already been through this with someone else, and they have a policy that you've put through its paces, and you feel like it's strong and you approved it, by all means, share it with me.
We'll copy it.
Right.
And we will certainly, submit that to them after we do what we have to do. So that's kind of that thought process on that, Mr. DiNardo. Mr. Kelch?
Number 9 here is highlighted yellow, at least on mine. Is that, this is regarding the, how many times the meter can be read, whether it's resident before the city is required to read the meter, and how many times the reading can be estimated, the limits on payment plans, defined parameters and such.
Exactly. I
I could
highlighted.
be mistaken, but I thought is that something we were gonna discuss in the Housing, Health, Public Safety Committee?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I highlighted it for that reason, to discuss that. In speaking with Anna Mary, and you will see that they also have who's responsible for what. And in this one, speaking with Anna Mary, I've asked Mayor Schneider and the Safety Service Director, and I'm sure it also will have Mr. Moore involved. And she was suggesting that that's the team that has to take care of this one. So they've been tasked with that. So that's why I highlighted that one in yellow, let you know that's what they're working on. And of all the ones that we have left, I think this one may prove to be the most difficult, maybe most time-consuming. So the mayor and the Safety Service Director, I'm sure he's going to be working with our law director and the water department. I think those folks are going to attack this one.
Okay.
Mr. Tracy?
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing as Chris, but,
Yeah, you'll see.
I assumed something like that would have been in this big policy and procedures manual that the city just put out. That should have been a part of that, honestly. I don't understand why that wasn't in there, why it wasn't. Maybe Mr. Moore can,
I think it's more like legal issues.
Mr. Moore?
I mean, the water meter policy, the way that's, what was the big policy and procedure manual dealt with city employees. This would be the question of how the city bills as a utility, and so it would be an odd place to put it, because it doesn't, however many times you read a meter, or how many, or what the authority is to negotiate a difference in an old bill, it's not something that would deal with employee conduct.
okay, I didn't realize that was strictly, I thought it was dealing with departments also.
Not so much the day-to-day functioning of how a department functions, like the police department functions this way, this is the way we investigate crimes,
Right.
this is the way it wasn't.
Right.
That's not what it was designed to do, so. And it was enough as it was.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. And if you look at number 4, the city does not have a written disaster recovery plan. That was one that, with the new software that Anna Mary and I have been talking about, if you look at her comments, she thought that SSI would help us formulate that disaster plan with the eGov system. So you'll see that in some of the comments on the side there as well. Mr. Bonzel? Sir?
So thank you for bringing this to us. Just a couple questions. or we'll to start with at least, what are the comments that are on the right?
Yes.
Are these comments that were made by the financial supervisors? Or did you make these comments?
Anna Mary wrote all these.
And I figured so, I mean, the way
Yeah.
that they're written.
Yeah.
Okay, so in these comments, it says, like, in process, sometimes see my comments from first reviews. I was checking my email, I don't have a copy that I know of the first review of these, and I'm sure you probably have it somewhere.
Yes.
After this meeting, could you send out?
Yeah, I thought I did, and if I didn't.
Well, I checked all the different copies, and none of them have comments, like,
Okay, I might have cut it off when I sent it to you.
Okay, yeah, that's the only thing. I just would love to see what some of those original comments were.
Yeah, those were mainly, Mr. Bonzel, dealing with the purchasing policy.
Well, there's like, I mean, but it's on a bunch of these. They'll say,
Yeah.
like, see comments from my first review, because it sounds like basically whatever happened on the first review, it sounds like she probably feels that there hasn't been as much, there hasn't been progress on these specific items. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 at least, but there might be more. Where
Yeah,
they say,
I think you're right, I think there's 4. I'll forward that to you. There may be more, but you're right. I couldn't fit, I had to do 11 by 17
Oh, yeah,
paper.
yeah.
I couldn't get the first comments on here, but I'll send that.
Yeah, and I would just say, yeah, I mean, the comments are definitely, I think, important for us.
Yeah.
The other item I'd just say, and this is just an overall, I mean, I am a little bit disappointed at the lack of progress that we have, just knowing how the huge breadth of items that we've got to do. I mean, there's a bunch of items on here, and I do, and while I appreciate that there's definitely been some items done, I think that we, as a city, we really need to see this speed up, because I think we really want to get out of financial emergency in Q1 or Q2 of next year. And some of these items are not going to be just a quick thing. And some of them can't be done yet. So, I mean, I'll just say some of them, we're waiting on the new software for SSI, so completely understand that. But there's others that I think that we definitely could make more progress on. There's not a ton of them, though, that are really council-initiated kind of actions. So a lot of these are like auditor's office or water department or various other things.
Correct.
And so I don't actually know the best way. I know that, we have a ton of people that have experience here. I don't know the best way exactly for how we should do this, but I mean, I personally would love to see, the executive elected officials, the law department, the treasurer, the auditor, and the mayor. I mean, they really should be like sitting down with this, and they should be working together on how they're going to accomplish these things. And of course, any council ones, which there are a couple, we should take the leadership on. But I'd love to see a much greater action on this. I don't know exactly the best way to get that, but I do feel like we can do better, and I think right now it would be a good time to really ramp this up.
Now, when I do send this, I make sure that, obviously communicating with the mayor, the treasurer, the auditor. Mr. Stith couldn't be here tonight. I spoke to him today. But yeah, I agree. Maybe the next committee of the whole, we can ask them to be here, because I'd like to start going over this every time we meet as a committee of the whole.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, and I mean, I'm hoping that the city administration, I mean, really, I mean, I just see this as, I know that you're on the Financial Recovery Commission, but a lot of these are department type things, so, I don't know, I mean, potentially should be somebody at the city that's working at the city full-time that really needs to be, somehow ultimately responsible for making sure that, we're moving forward, because if you have a full-time job, I know, we all have full-time jobs here, so, or we all have things that we're doing outside, our full-time job is not the city. So, again, I'm open to feedback on how that looks, but, I just don't know if you're gonna be the one that's gonna be able to really completely keep driving this, right? Because there's just so many things on here that need to get done.
I agree. There is a lot to do on here. I do feel like we've made a considerable amount of progress and continuing to push. And I've asked Anna Mary to help us in any way she can, and
Yeah.
the mayor and our treasurer and auditor as well. And I know Mr. Moore will be he's heavily involved in these things.
Yeah, and and I just want to really emphasize that my comments are not directed at you. I mean, there's not very many things here that the president of council, if any, has to do, right? It's not on you. So just want to super emphasize that. But I know that you've volunteered to help kind of coordinate that, and I just want to make sure that the people that are that are going to have to do some of these items, ultimately are the, I don't know if we need to be hearing from them, but I mean, I really want to make sure they're getting them done, because, like I said, we don't want to, as Mr. Dracy said, we have to start paying a percentage of the fees cost to stay in the fiscal emergency, and if we don't get one of these items done, we're staying in it. So it's like, I just want to make sure we're getting as many of these checked off as possible.
I agree. Mr. Tracy?
Trying to figure out how to say this nicely. I think the powers to be who are working on this are doing what they need to do, and I'm going to reiterate the fact that I think the state are the ones that put their hooks into us and will not let go or retract. And I don't know how we do it. I don't know how we get them to retract them. I know we're paying them now because they're not free anymore. So, you know, they're getting that money right back from the city. Think they're really going to let that money go? That's why I'm so irritated, because I think that they're just trying to push the process as long as they can to get that money.
Mr. Bonds?
Thank you, Mr. President. So I've reviewed some of the spreadsheets that you sent in the past, and I think the items are I think the items are from the report on accounting methods, and I think they're the same, like the recommendations or the things that need to be done. So I really think at this point that they've put the ball in the city's court. The city needs to, we just need to carry it and take it to the finish line. And that's just my opinion of it. I know that there are some costs to this, but I truly don't think that they want to be here any more than we want them to be here, frankly. I think there's a lot of other things they could be doing. And the city only pays a percentage of the cost of this. Like, it's not like we're paying 100%. I think we pay 25% or 50% the most right now. So it's still costing the state more money than we're paying them when it comes to the fiscal emergency.
Well, we know what our expectations are, and I'm trying to help expedite that in any fashion that I can. But you're right, as you'll see listed here, the departments that are responsible, they're aware of this and what needs to be done. Mr. Tracy?
I think I will say one thing, though. I think the most disappointing thing on here is the treasurer's office, and that the fact that they've only gotten one thing done and most of the rest of it are, there's I think two items that aren't even started yet, and they're pretty significant items. I'm trying to find one of the ones I was looking for. There's one in here that I believe is the treasurer's office, where they're just kind of taking the checks, the tax checks, and throwing them into a bin on the floor. I don't know what the administration needs to do to get them on their feet, get them on the ball, but that, I will say, with them lacking in the treasurer's office, something needs to happen. Mr. Maloney needs to step up and be a leader.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Mr. Bonzo?
So, I just want to note that there's 11 items on here for the treasurer. The treasurer's there's 2 of them that are green for treasurer, so I guess that means that they're completed. There's, and God loving, there's 20 items for the auditor, and that's a lot of items, and there's only 2 green for the auditor. And then one of the treasurer items that is found is not really the treasurer at all, it's item 34. The city's minutes should state what financial reports were provided to council. Well, the auditor's office provides that, but really that's not even the auditor's office, that's really the clerk of council that, that's on council, that's not on that. So you can take 1 off treasurer for that, so that's really 10 for treasurer. So he's at 20%, but I think that's better than other areas. But either way, I think there's a lot of blame to go, not blame, but I think there's a lot of improvement to go around here, not just in the treasurer's office. I think we can all agree that we probably all haven't put the focus on this to make sure these things got done as much as it needs it.
Thank you, Mr. Bonzo. Since you brought up item number 34, I've talked to Mr. DiNardo, and I think I've relayed what Anna Mary had said. There are financial reports that she would like to see go to the Finance Committee and for them to review them. And I think that's what one of the things that you're referring to. This one is, I think, that make sure that the city's minutes state that financial reports were provided to council. And that's a simple That's a simple fix, that one.
And the bank recs was the other one, and we stated that we're going to add that to every quarterly review.
Right. Mr. Moore, you had your hand up, sir?
I was just gonna say, the vast majority of these, I think are one of two kinds. One is either, this is what the city does, and somebody needs to write down all the steps they take when it happens and the things to be worried about. And the other kind of things that we don't do. I don't think we do an asset inventory. I don't think anybody's come to my office and said, okay, add up all the monitors, add up all the reams of paper. I don't think we've had anybody ever do that. And so I think in both of those situations, maybe the most productive thing to get them moving and get them moving in the right way is to get examples from other cities. I don't know how to do an equipment inventory. To put stickers on things. I mean, I don't know the last time the city's done that. And to do that on a regular basis. So if we have a model from somebody else, or how to do a purchase order, what would that look like? What are the steps that needed? So to get examples from other cities, I think would be the easiest and most effective first step on a lot of these.
I agree.
You know, and even talking about what can council do, well, you could bring in Public Works and say, okay, so tell me about the billing that you do. You could bring in the auditor and say, okay, tell me about the purchase order policy, but it's still gonna be up to the people that do it every day, so.
Right. Anyone else? Mr. Bonzo?
Thank you, Mr. President. So, I mean, I'd like to see, if possible, if maybe you could request this, but for each one of these items that has a specific department here, I mean, I'd like them to provide an update onto where they're at with it, and then also if they need help. I mean, it could just be that things are not done, something's not done because they don't know how to address it, they don't know how to start. I mean, if that's the case, I mean, it'd be good to know just so that we can try to either go find that expertise or do what Mr. Moore said, try to find versions of things that other cities do and, you know, adopt it. But I think potentially that might be our next best step, is just to get an update from on each of these items from each area that is listed under the departments. And if there is something on here that shouldn't be under them, then they should let us know too, so that we can change it.
I think that we sent a letter, the clerk of council sent a letter out. That's been a few months, but we'll certainly do it again to the departments and ask for an update.
Yeah, I mean, or if you could just, yeah, I mean, and that's fine, but then specifically with the auditor, the treasurer, and the law director, I don't know if you have any or not, but,
I'm listed on a lot, but I don't know anything about those departments' work, so I think we're on there to like help draft it as a policy, that then complies with the law. I think that's why we're listed on a lot.
Exactly. I think a lot of those, you're the last stop to.
and that's fine. I just want to make sure that we're, like, if people aren't responding, let's just reach out to them, let's try to get it, because, again, I just don't want to go another 3 months and we have one more green line or 2 more green lines, and I'd really like to see this, I'd like to see half this thing green lines, you know, at the next time that we meet, frankly, so that we can really make progress, and then we can see the items that are, you know, whatever's left, we'll know, like, what the bigger things are that, like, for some reason aren't getting done, and we can then focus on that, because it's kind of hard to focus on. I think there's 30 items here that aren't green, so, yeah, anyways, I just hope that we can, like I said, I know I've said it a million times, but I really, really want to see us make additional progress as a city on this. So.
The other thing I just want to mention, I think the date was September 6th when Anna Mary and her team came down, and they were here pretty much most of the day, and I think they were only able to verify the 5 or 6 that we had here. So I think it takes a little time for them to come down and to verify that we're doing it properly as well.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. If there's items here that are done but just need verified, let's just note that. I mean, if that's the reason, I understand that they have to verify and we can't make it green until they verify it, but that's good to know. I mean, if those items are there, maybe we'll have like an orange or something, knowing that it's just pending, so that'll help.
And then my plan is to have another committee of the whole, I think it's December 2nd, that's the first Monday of the month, and perhaps we could ask treasurer and auditor to be here that night, and Mayor Schneider, and we can go through these together.
That's a good idea.
Anyone else? Thank you for your comments. And that's our last item on the agenda for this evening, so we're adjourned.
Thank you so much.